Hello and welcome to the January 9th, 2023 meeting of the Planning Commission in Lake Oswego. I would like to call the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Heap.
Sorry, here.
Leek.
Present.
Mitchell.
Here.
Moreno.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Miles. Rigby.
Here.
And Stewart.
Here.
And Afghan.
Thank you. Now we're going to have our council update with our new liaison from the City Council, Councilor Ali Afghan. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Ali Afghan, and the Mayor Buck has asked me to be your liaison. I'm happy to be here, and I will do my best to bring information from the City Council meeting to you, and vice versa. We've had only one City Council meeting on January 3rd. There were two new city councilors who took the oath of office and one re-elected city councilor who also took the oath of office. Councilor Verdict was unanimously elected to be the president of the city council. There were several annexations that came to the city council for review and approval. They were all approved as far as I remember. And there is the boards and commissions updates and interaction with the city council this coming Thursday that I ask that you all attend that and hear what other boards and commissions are discussing and what their goals are with the conversation with the city council. Those are all I have from the January 3rd meeting. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I do encourage everyone to attend Thursday's meeting. It's at the Adult Community Center, starting at 6:30 p.m., as I recall. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Does anyone have questions for our new liaison? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to public comments for issues that are not on the agenda. Is anyone here to speak? Thank you. Regarding Commission for Citizen Involvement, the only update I have, and it's an important one actually, because we've been working on this, is the Palisades Homeowners Neighborhood Forum, which will be via Zoom on Tuesday, January 17th from 7 to 8 p.m. That's all I have, except for reiterating the meeting on Thursday at the Adult Community Center, and I plan on being there. I can take notes and get back to you on it. Thank you. Now we have to vote on the approving the minutes for November 28th, 2022 meeting. Does anyone have any comments, additions, corrections to those minutes? Do I have a motion to approve them? Motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It takes it. They are approved. Thank you very much. Next is our finding and conclusion order for LU 22-0008. There's no public testimony accepted tonight, and to expedite this, I don't see that there's any more discussion to be had. And I'm hoping that the commissioners who weren't here for some of the discussions did catch up on YouTube for those meetings. And I'd just like to take a roll call vote on accepting these findings. Mr. Siegel? Okay, we need a motion.
A motion to approve findings and conclusions in order for LU 22-0008.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Heap,
No.
Leek,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Moreno,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Rigby,
No.
Stewart,
Yes.
Thank you. The ayes have it. It is approved. Thank you very much.
I have a question, not that it will change anything. I just have a question about the letter that we received or email from Miss Donna.
Can you speak into your
D-A-N-N?
speaker?
I'm sorry? Oh, sorry. I have a question about the memo that we received or email from Miss Jamie Dana. In there, she talks about, I won't read it all, but in the penultimate paragraph, she talks about how it will impact her home as well as other historic homes. I've got a question for, I guess, Mr. Siegel. She can apply for a variance, right?
Yeah, Commissioner Phillips. So the issue that in the testimony, it was G4, I think, raised, was that they felt that the limitation on how much one could enlarge their home would encumber their property, and they wouldn't be able to do what she described as a small addition onto the house. And we analyzed that. We looked at the site, the findings, kind of describe the analysis that we did on that. And what we found was that because the ordinance provides for these two thresholds where you'd have to enlarge the floor area by at least 50% and also attain 90% of the maximum allowed floor area, only at that point would you be required to bring the property into full conformance to the code. And so when we applied, those thresholds and we looked at the allowances that are in the code for floor area on what size lot this would be, what we found was that they would have theoretically, they'd have the potential for, and it's in the findings, it's on page 3. There's some analysis in here that shows, so the code allows 2,750 square feet total floor area per dwelling, or 3,250 square feet of floor area, including a garage. And 90% of that would be 2,475 square feet without a garage, or 2,950 square feet with a garage. And currently the dwelling is only 1,100 square feet. So when we looked at that, we concluded, and it's subjective, but they were describing a small addition. Well, the code as amended would allow them to more than double the size of their house. So that's the finding that was drafted for the Planning Commission, just concluding that wouldn't be an encumbrance and what would be consistent with the comprehensive plan. That answers your question.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to number 8, the work session, Planning Commission and Commission for Citizen Involvement Goals for 2023. And I believe Senior Planner or Staff Planner Eric Olson will be taking over this discussion. Welcome. Happy New Year.
Hi. Happy New Year. Thank you, Chair Lee, and the rest of the Planning Commission. So as Chair Lee indicated, I'm here tonight or remotely here tonight rather, to essentially get any final input that the Planning Commission might have on the list of goals that we've recommended for this year, now 2023. Just as a reminder, we did have a previous work session about the Planning Commission's goals for 2023 back on October 25th of last year. During that meeting, the Commission did request more information on shared parking. 4 items, so I'll start with shared parking. In terms of shared parking, the Commission proposed that we essentially review the city's existing shared parking regulations. They also suggested that we coordinate that with the city's compliance with the state mandated climate-friendly and equitable communities, or CFEC for short, that with the rulemaking for that work, and that is included in the goals proposed by staff. The second information request related to electric vehicle charging. So the commission requested an update from the Sustainability Advisory Board, or SAB, on the current status of the city's electric vehicle charging policies. And so since that time, staff has arranged for a presentation on that topic from a representative from the Sustainability Advisory Board as a part of the commission's 2023 work plan, and you can see that on the forecast. The next one was the Transportation Systems Plan update. So essentially, we did find, after discussion with the Transportation Advisory Board, or TAB, that the Planning Commission and TAB do have a shared goal related to updating the city's Transportation Systems Plan, or TSP, and particularly the goal to update the city's list of pathways in the TSP. There's also some interest in identifying enhancement of local transit options within that update. And so staff has recommended, and we've received direction to begin scoping an update to the city's TSP after Metro completes their update to the Regional Transportation Plan, and we anticipate that will occur later this year, later in 2023, because that would be necessary essentially to have the guidance necessary to know what the sort of regional requirements for our city TSP updates will be from that Metro level. So in the meantime, though, the commission did provide us with guidance to look for ways to collaborate with TAB on this work later this year, and suggested that we have representatives from TriMet or Metro come in and talk to the city regarding changes to planned transit services within the city. So we're actually doing that right now. We're coordinating with the Transportation Advisory Board to schedule presentations from representatives from both Metro and TriMet. And you can see that on the forecast. So those are tentative dates, and we are going to work with City Council essentially to try to coordinate that all and make sure that we're not asking for duplicate presentations or making duplicate requests to those folks, so that we can just consolidate as much as possible. Otherwise, there was a request related to the Palisades Mid-Century Overlay District project related to the work plan, and you can see that we did update and revise the work plan along with representatives from the Palisades Neighborhood Association, and that is also included in the list of goals. So I will just briefly go over that list of goals that we recommended. There are 6 that we've included, and a few sort of additional notes that I wanted to add as well. So the first one would be to continue our work with House Bill 2003, both the housing needs and production piece. So the housing needs analysis update that's due later this year, and the housing production strategy that is due in June of next year. That would be a good amount of work for staff, and that will involve the work of a housing production strategy task force, which has now met with their first meeting back in December. So we have the second work session on the housing needs analysis update scheduled for the Planning Commission's next meeting on January 23rd. So the next goal that's included in our recommendation here is that we continue to work towards compliance with the state of Oregon's climate-friendly equitable communities rules. And so we'll be receiving more of an update later in the meeting today from Community Development Director Siegel on that particular project. But we are requesting a 1-year extension for compliance with those rules in order to better coordinate our recommendations with policy changes that will be necessary for House Bill 2003. So essentially for 2023, the commission and staff are going to begin implementation of this rulemaking sort of adoption by preparing a scope of work and public engagement plan. In terms of the next goal, this is a new addition to the list, actually. We received recent direction from City Council to create a work plan to develop time, place, and manner regulations for psilocybin facilities within the city. So essentially that would be necessary to be consistent with Oregon's Measure 109. We do have that now included, at least that tentative timeline on the Planning Commission forecast. There's 3 estimated work sessions, including a panel that would be convened at the Planning Commission in the winter and spring of this year, and we're looking at hearings in summer of this year for that project. Again, based on direction from City Council there. The next goal is to continue our work and complete our work to develop a process to require mitigation for ministerial residential development. As we've discussed previously, we did get direction from City Council to really gather more information related to that issue in particular and the potential impacts that our proposal could have on the production of middle housing and the development costs that it could add in the development of middle housing. So we are, sort of going through with Council's direction to talk to developers about that particular issue, but it's still kind of tentative based on our direction from City Council. But we are tentatively scheduling a presentation with City Council in winter of this year, so next month, to talk about this or to sort of begin these discussions. And in terms of the direction we receive, then we're also planning to maybe take a little bit more of a holistic look at this point. But again, we're kind of receiving a little bit further direction, I think, at future meetings from City Council on that particular project. And we do have a tentative work session scheduled later this year in winter at the Planning Commission for that as well. In terms of goal number 5 here, we've talked about this before, but to assist the Palisades Neighborhood Association with planning for an overlay zone. We did have a work session on this last year, so we do estimate 2 more at the Planning Commission this year in the spring, as well as hearings in the summer or fall of this year for this project. You can see that we've updated the work plan and included that along with the materials for our meeting today. And those reflect conversations with folks from the Palisades Neighborhood Association about sort of some clarifications, I guess, related to Oregon land use planning requirements and timelines. So there's a shared agreement on the schedule and a mutual understanding of those issues at this point. In terms of the 6th goal, that's our annual CDC maintenance amendments, and those are scheduled to occur this year on the same timeline that they were brought forth last year. So work sessions in the summer and fall, and a hearing in winter of this year. One thing that I would mention in terms of Planning Commission workload, we do anticipate a code audit later this year related to economic development and sort of furtherance of the city's economic development goals. So that is one thing that we received direction from City Council, to discuss a bit and sort of at least take on as a planning department. So just in terms of our workload considerations, I wanted to be sure to mention that. We did not receive any comments relevant to the Planning Commission's goals for 2023. So in general, at this point, we just are looking for input from the Planning Commission on those proposed 2023 goals, which will be transmitted as we've discussed earlier in the meeting at the Boards and Commissions Summit later this week on Thursday. So we just want to make sure to finalize that before we present it to the larger group. Anyway, that concludes our presentation, but happy to address any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any comments or questions regarding the goal items? Commissioner Stewart? Phillips.
Yep. I have a question on number 4, the Palisades overlay. It says there the staff recommends prioritizing it in the Planning Commission work plan. Is it a fair assumption that the work plan you provided, you've implemented that prioritization already? Or are you asking us to see if we can find ways to move it forward? Quite honestly, I don't believe we can do any more based upon all the things that have got to get done. I think October of 2023 is pretty robust to begin with. So, but I'm just trying to figure out if you're asking us for input, or have you already implemented the prioritization?
The proposed schedule that we've included would reflect that prioritization of that and its inclusion in our list of goals for this year as well.
I think it's scheduled a work session on August 21st right now, and then another work session in November 14th. Is that accurate? Oh, that's last year's. Okay.
Yeah, I think that would have been, yeah, it's like that. Well, that would be a delay. So our next work session on the policies overlay is scheduled for
Oh,
March
yeah, it's
13th,
March,
with the city council study session shortly after.
right. I was looking at last year's schedule. Sorry about that. All good.
You have three meetings scheduled this year just on the Palisades overlay with the Planning Commission.
We'll move that along for sure. Did you want to make a comment about the housing?
Yeah, I had asked, this is a little bit of an aside, but it has to do with one of the goals. I asked Chair Leak for a minute just to summarize the housing production strategies initial meeting that was held back in December. I was not at the meeting, unfortunately, but I was able to watch the proceedings online and can summarize. It generally was more of kind of an introductory meet and greet, kind of at the first part of the meeting. There's probably about, I'd say, 15 or so task force members with a variety of backgrounds, and also includes various commission representatives, homeowners, renters, as well as staff and the mayor. The meeting process will extend from, there'll be about 6 different task force meetings that will extend through July of 2024. And I think Eric had mentioned the next meeting's coming up in March. And around that time, there will be I believe the consultant had said that they're going to issue a draft housing needs analysis at that time for the review of the task force. And then the meeting concluded with electing a chair and vice chair, as well as approving bylaws. So anyway, I just want to give you all a quick update on that.
Thank you. Are they assessing available land to do this sort of building on?
I think that's part of the of what the consultant has been asked to do. Again, we didn't really get into much of the work plan in this first meeting. It was more of just kind of summarizing sort of what the procedures and the initial steps will be.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions for Commissioner Phillips?
Chair Lee, I can just address that last question of yours. We will be asking the consultant for our work on the housing needs analysis as part of the housing needs analysis to develop a buildable lands inventory, so that we'll take stock of the existing sort of inventory of buildable land within the city, for a better word. And I guess I would just also mention that we'll be describing that in a bit more detail on the 23rd as well. We'll be presenting similar sort of overview of what we're doing as a task force and sort of what we're doing in terms of the work plan for the project as well. So we'll have more opportunities to get into that in more detail.
Chair Leak and
Thank you.
Eric, it would be helpful at this, maybe not at this point, but between now and then, if the commissioners had specific questions that you were wanting answered in that work session about what is the scope, what can we expect in the way of deliverables, and I mean those. Eric, if there are any questions before that presentation, could the commissioners just direct those to you?
Absolutely, yeah, I'd be happy to incorporate anything in the presentation, or just ask or answer questions rather offline, whatever you prefer.
Thank you. So just email our questions to you?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, I can be sure to cover anything at the presentation on the 23rd if you'd be requested to.
Great, thank you very much. Do I have a motion to accept these goals or delete any of them? Any discussion? It's a workload. It's all really good material for the Planning Commission, I think. It'll keep us busy this year. Commissioner Stewart?
Eric, you'd mentioned at the end of your presentation a code audit. Is that the way you described it, it sounded like it might be something slightly different than what we do annually. Is there some sort of different emphasis on that particular one? What, why we're calling it a code audit versus, updates to the development code?
I can address that. So this came out of the city council's goal last year to adopt an economic development strategy and resource plan. And the strategy really has 5 parts. One area is in sort of business assistance and networking, which is more in the chamber's purview. There's planning and redevelopment. One of the strategies was to review and update as needed the city's urban renewal district plans and redevelopment plans for the 2 areas where we have them, and in the 3rd area, Foothills, where we had one, and to look at that. That's essentially a work program that will extend over probably multiple years, just doing that work. The code audit is specific to the community development code and the fees that we charge for development. And the council was interested in looking at that for, lean type of process improvement or just improvements that we could make that would be conducive to business investment and job creation. So that's the overall charge or charter on it. The work itself is, it's fairly technical. I think we would go about it in a way that, we've called it an audit, but it would be really a review through, filtering that through timeliness, flexibility, ease of changes of use. We would develop criteria for that. We would come to the Planning Commission to get your input on kind of the evaluation of that. But the work itself would be, largely it would be technical review of the code. It would be interviewing focus groups and stakeholders who are engaged in, the permit process or who are operating businesses. It would be business-oriented, business-focused. So that's really the kind of the direction. The timeline is that it would occur over this year. We're anticipating an initial check-in with the Planning Commission or a briefing probably sometime in the middle of the year. And so we have a lot of work to do to scope it and to get the assistants on board to help us with that. That's what it's about. The end product would be a set of recommendations for, probably amending the code, updating our fees. It may be that there are comprehensive plan elements that it wouldn't initiate the changes, but it would tee those up for the Planning Commission and Council to consider. So that's really what it's about. We've been doing a lot of work on housing for the past several years, and this is just taking a similar look at business and economic development.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Shall we take a vote on accepting these goals? I need a motion.
I so move.
We have a motion to accept the goals for citizen involvement and the Planning Commission for 2023.
There should be a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Heap,
Yes.
Leak,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Moreno,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Rigby,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. The goals have been accepted, and we'll move on to City Council and will be presented at the meeting on Thursday. Number 9 is other business, which is the climate-friendly and equitable communities parking PP 22-0001. We are taking public comments. Do we have anyone, perhaps via Zoom? No public comments being made this evening. We're going to have an update regarding the city's response to the state of Oregon's climate-friendly, equitable. What is the acronym that someone said a little earlier? How is it pronounced?
CFEC. C-F-E-C. Be careful how you pronounce that.
Yeah, I'll just kind of go with climate-friendly, those things. Staff Commission Coordinator Siegel, would you like to take over?
Thank you, Chair Leek. And the update is, it's essentially what's in the staff memo, the Planning Commission memo. Eric gave the spoiler on it. We have asked the state for an extension, in fact, to December 2024. We may not need all of that time to make the changes that are required by the rules, but we've asked for that additional time so that we can coordinate the work on different, primarily parking policy options that the rules provide with the work we're doing on housing needs and housing production, because we believe that there's a connection there between making housing more affordable or providing more flexibility for different types of housing options and parking reforms. And we're not the only city or the only jurisdiction that has asked for additional time. In fact, the state's already granted at least one exception or one extension that I'm aware of, and I know of other communities that are also asking for more time. And this was really one of the major issues that local governments had when LCDC was promulgating the rules, was that we knew at that time that there wouldn't be enough time to, in fact, do this work, not just from a workload standpoint, but just kind of the logistics of getting community input and going through a legislative process. We knew we would need more time. So I think, the state, the Department of Land Conservation and Development has been very reasonable, and they've provided this path for us to utilize, and I think it makes sense for us to do that. As part of the extension request, we were required to provide basically a status report on where we're at with compliance with the rules, because it's about more than just parking. And so the letter that's attached to the staff memo goes over each of those requirements and where we're at, and some of the requirements that apply to other cities, or that apply to ours and other cities, have not yet implemented. We are in fact in compliance. So for example, our two town centers, the downtown town center and Lake Grove, are both designated as town centers under Metro's functional plan, and our development code standards that apply in each of those areas are compliant with Metro plan and with the climate-friendly and equitable community rules. So, that's one area where we're able to say, we've met this requirement. And there are actually a number of parking policy options that we are required to consider or choose from, some of which we've already implemented. For example, the city allows shared parking, and we in fact encourage, or at least allow, redevelopment of surface parking lots into mixed use, into more compact, pedestrian-friendly developments, mixed-use developments. And so in our communication with the state, we pointed that out and provided examples of where, not only are we implementing these policies, but we have experience, seeing climate-friendly and equitable development occur on those sites. So I'm confident that we will be granted more time to do this work. We'll just have to wait and see what their response is, because they have to coordinate their granting of extensions with other jurisdictions, and kind of falls in with their workload as well. So happy to answer any questions, and we do have this work at least plugged into your calendar and the work program, so that we'll check in with you again in February once we've heard back from the state.
I have a question. Is shared parking considered parking garages?
Shared parking, meaning where we require parking to the quantities of parking that we require, that property owners or businesses have the ability to share parking spaces, where they can demonstrate through a minor development review process that the peak hours of use of those parking spaces are not substantially overlapping, that they can in fact share it over a 24-hour period. So an example of that might be a religious campus or church, temple, and some other commercial use that's not operating during the times that they're in, people are attending services. So we don't have a lot of examples of that. I think there are opportunities actually to improve our shared parking program or ordinance, but in terms of the minimum requirements of the CFEC rules, we, that is one policy that we do have in place. So.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Wow, we got through a whole lot of business this evening in a timely fashion. I guess we're on to schedule review.
All right, I can assist with that. We're into 2023, obviously our first meeting of 2023, and second meeting of 2023 will be on the 23rd of this month, January, and we will be having sort of, not introductory, but in some ways kind of overview, I guess, work session related to the housing needs analysis and housing production strategy work, including some of our consultants that we've been working with from MIG that will be here to talk to the Planning Commission on that date. Additionally, we will, or we have scheduled a work session related to those psilocybin time, place, and manner regulations on that date as well. That should be the bulk of what we're covering on that day. In terms of the trainings, we're still sort of working with different, we're working with the city manager's office and city council to coordinate that, but it looks like we will not be holding anything on the 23rd, and we'll need to reschedule that date. So looking like there will likely just be one date, but we will keep you posted on that. So stay tuned for more on that. Hopefully we'll have something set in stone soon. On the 13th of February, we have a work session scheduled on that mitigation work related to ministerial development. As I mentioned, that's tentative, but that is what we've currently scheduled for that date. Commissioner Heap, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Sorry, this might be a little bit out of order, but in terms of schedule, it could fall under other business too. I was just wondering, is there any work that's currently being planned to discuss some of the urban growth boundary stuff that's going on between Clackamas County and Metro and involving Washington County? There was a lot of news where I guess the Clackamas County was concerned about, doing what they were deeming land swaps. In Lake Oswego, we do have, of course, the urban growth boundary, and we do have, areas that are outside of it. Is council, or are there any discussions or considerations to look at the impact of kind of what's going on with Metro and Clackamas and Washington County?
Not to my knowledge, though, Scott, Director Siegel, you might have a more robust answer on some of the other sort of long-term conversations and where those are at. But in terms of the more recent, land swap issue, at least I'm not aware of anything in particular.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And Commissioner Heap, in terms of the swap between Washington County and Clackamas County, between the lands that were brought into the urban growth boundary in the Damascus area and are being swapped out of the boundary for lands to be brought in for the city of Tigard, the River Terrace development in that area of Tigard. No, our city is not engaged in that discussion, and it's I don't think it really affects our interests. We've been really focused on the Stafford Basin, and the council, annually in their goal setting. Well, in the past, they've prioritized maintaining our current policy in Stafford and remaining at the table. So we have both a three-party agreement with our neighboring cities, Tualatin and West Lynn, where we've agreed on how we would go about planning for that area once such a time arises, how we would coordinate and work together on that. We also have an agreement with the two cities in Clackamas County and Metro that kind of addresses that as well. And so the critical path on the urban growth boundary, as far as Lake Oswego has been concerned, is one, seeing the improvements to 205, Interstate 205 completed, and secondly, sort of the timeliness and one, the need for land, when there is a need for land and it can only be met through, bringing land into the urban growth boundary, then we would look at, only then would we look at Stafford. We wouldn't be planning for anything in Stafford unless or until there was in fact a need for that additional land. And then we would coordinate our concept planning with the two cities, Clackamas County and Metro, of course. So it's also predicated on there was a 10-year waiting period that the three cities agreed on, and that was now, several years ago. So there's a time dimension to it, and there's also kind of an infrastructure and cost dimension to it that's really not within our span of control. That's maybe more than what you asked, but I think that's the relevant discussion that we've had here regarding the UGB.
Could you clarify for the council, the commission, the Damascus swap out and why that's happening? I understand it, but I wonder if everybody does.
Well, what I know about it is that, Damascus is this area in Clackamas County that was slated for urban growth expansion, years ago. It was one of the areas that was brought into the urban growth boundary, and Damascus organized and incorporated as a city. The property owners in that area decided to incorporate, or the voters incorporated, and then they later disincorporated because they were not wanting to be a city anymore. And so that doesn't preclude an area being urbanized, although urban development is really best, in my opinion, my experience, best planned and implemented through cities, because we are typically the service providers. It's more efficient for a number of reasons. The area is it's no longer a city. It's still in the urban growth boundary. I think from Metro's perspective, it's not ready really to urbanize. Concept planning that had occurred out in that area cannot be implemented because there's no governance to really carry it out. So from a regional perspective, there's a great need for housing. There is a shortage of housing, as we all know. And so I think the proposal from Washington County and Tigard was to swap this land that's not usable currently for urban development in Clackamas County for an urban growth boundary expansion in that part of Tigard, in order to bring housing online faster. So I think it's really driven by housing need. Now, the issue that the county is raised is not really something that our city has engaged in, but I think Clackamas County elected officials are concerned about that because of it is a land base that we have, or that they have in the county, that's being depleted through this land swap. And so,
Was the whole urban growth boundary of Damascus taken away?
no, I don't
Just a
believe so.
piece of it.
And I don't know, if you'd like, I can get more information on that. I don't know what the number of acres is.
And Clackamas County would rather switch out some of Damascus's urban growth boundary for something more contiguous to the urban growth boundary around Clackamas County closer in? Again, yeah.
I don't know. And I think there were actually some lands in the Oregon City vicinity that were also part of that swap. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's complicated, and I have to admit I haven't really studied it. So
As if you didn't have anything else
if it's
to do.
something you'd like to know more about,
Right.
we can come back.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a schedule review, and I guess we are ready to adjourn. I call this meeting adjourned.